working with EGs in their Riyadh head office. So uh, this is going to be just a general, broader concept and what is going on and happening, because especially within the region, KSA now is like a huge focus, and when it comes to the development and mega projects. So let's start with the practices, what happens here or globally, just a generic approach for the public transport. So advancing in the public transport studies is very crucial and important, because uh, even now here within this country, we are facing a huge problem and hurdles of constraint of the capacity and the increasing number of private cars. So here we are just going to have a comprehensive overview of the public transportation studies and some identification of the problems, performance measures, field data collection approaches, and field data is very crucial and critical when it comes to decision making. And when we talk about the future projects, whether it is for the public transport or the private transport or a transit, whatever mode we are going to use. So this is just a brief agenda, like our journey through the public transport and data is like just an introduction of the studies, problem identification in the transit system generally, or focused or generalized for Pakistan, and transit performance matrices, field data collection methods which are being adopted and are adopted in Pakistan and globally, comparison of the practices between Pakistan and global, and advanced techniques for demand modeling and data collection, and recommendations and way forward. So the importance is that public transport definitely is one of the key pillars and cornerstone when it comes to the urban sprawl and development. So the studies for public transport are very critical and crucial, and especially when we are nowadays talking about the sustainable cities, this is very important that we focus on the public transport studies, and those all depend upon the data collection and reliability and availability of the data is very critical when it comes to those digital studies. It has a huge economic impact. It goes into so many details when we talk about the economic impact, environmental benefits, sustainable transport, equity, accessibility, because it covers different demographic and social sectors of the society. So when we talk about public transportation studies, we also focus on the efficiency, accessibility, and sustainability of the transit system that is now being, like when we talk about the modern societies or who have advanced in public transport, most of their public transport is very efficient, accessible, and especially sustainable transport system. So the addressing these challenges also are related with the reliability and affordability, plus the integration of all the services. So it all comes into circle and are dependent on each other. Problem identification is one of the key element when we talk about the public transport need or studies, even when the data collection is involved. So we have to look at the different perspective, whether it is road or the public transport system currently or the future one. We talk about the crowding of the system. The system is unreliable and you cannot predict that how it is going to interact with the current traffic, and limited coverage also plays a role. We know that Pakistan is growing in the BRT and mass transit system. We have a metro in Lahore and we have BRT system in a couple of cities, but that's limited by the coverage. We are clearly aware of the situation that we are not having any kind of a broader coverage within the city or the integration of those systems within each other. Sometimes when we talk about the BRT and metro, the other infrastructure, which is the existing public transport, is not integrated as well as using outdated infrastructure. So the critical part we start with is the identification of the problem, and common transit issues, not limited to these. You guys can always give input feedback or ask question and discuss about it. The traffic congestion, definitely, as we can see also in the image, that if your traffic is congested, and then the overall public transport system, whether you are going with the efficient system, you are having latest technologies, you are having sustainable transport, does not matter at all. So when you face traffic congestion, then the overall system just collapse. There are funding constraints. Being a country which is not developed, and we definitely face funding constraints when it comes to the improvement and the update of the infrastructure as well as the studies. Talk about the studies, like we have had studies from like from 90s and 80s, and the implementation of those studies, even within the major cities such as Lahore, Islamabad, and Rawalpindi, took way too long for us to implement those. And maybe those studies were just not applicable at the time. So we need to evaluate that. And doing the studies again and again also, circles back to the economic impact of the studies. There are safety concerns as visible from the image as well, and then the environmental impact of using the outdated technology and the systems. Global best practices identification problem is the first thing and the key thing whenever it comes. We need to identify the problem. Otherwise, we cannot figure out the solution. We can propose the solutions. We can go, okay, let's go with electric. Okay, but you need to identify the problems first. Let's say the sustainable transport has so many other constraints, whether our country is going to be able to cater for the electricity demand for the public transport, etc., etc. We can go into so many details, and we can talk about each individual topic in detail, but this is just like an overall general coverage of the best practices in the problem identification. Data driven analysis, the key point when we talk about the problem identification is to have a solid and comprehensive data, and then doing the analysis on that collected data. So first thing is to have the data, and then the analysis of the data, which is very critical for the existing evaluation of the problems and the system, as well as for the future predictions. And then you look into the passenger feedback, and regular and consistent audits are also very important. Then you can evaluate the service and also the system as well as the operator of the public transport. And then predictive maintenance, it is very important, because if you face a closure of one of the operation of the or the facility or the line, then you would have to face a lot of issues and the ridership, and then you face just the constraint, such as the line is obstructed by something because of the maintenance issues, then you would have to deal with a bigger problem. And key indicators for the transit performance metrics are like the on time. This is very, very critical and important. You can predict where you are going, origin and destination, based on this one. But if it is impacted and not reliable, then this is going to impact overall journey. Passengers are not going to be happy, and they are not on time, and they talk about the unreliability of the systems. And this has to be communicated, and this all goes back into circle and depending on each other. And then we talk about the passenger kilometer travel. This also depends on, overall systems attractability and accessibility, whether people are willing to pay, whether people are, then again, on time performance, passenger kilometer travel, cost per passenger, customer satisfaction score. All these are dependent on each other. So one of them, if one of them is affected, definitely the rest of the KPIs are impacted. It's not just limited to these KPIs, but these are like the overall KPIs when we look into the system implementation and introduction, even for existing as well as for the future. Then regional performance indicators when it comes to projects which are operational, as well as when you are going to plan for the future projects, are the fare box recovery ratio, how it is going to be implemented, RRI, load factors, distance between the failures, accessibility index. This is also very important, because if your transport system is not accessible, then it is not going to be, attractive for the people. And it would cover people with a determination, people with the families, and you need to have accessibility to the stations and between the lines, different services, integration of the transfers between the lines and the services, such as so on and so on. This image is just a depiction of the dashboard for the KPIs when it comes to public transport, and not limited to these. You can always expand and click on different aspects: the passengers, the services, the cost, operation, maintenance, etc., and serviceability as well. So traditional approaches, which are widely being implemented and used throughout globally in Pakistan as well as within the kingdom here and in other Western countries, are like the manual counting of the passenger travel time studies by boarding and lighting the vehicles, paper surveys by collecting the papers, questionnaires at household, as well as questionnaires at the bus stops and other transit stops and hubs, origin destination studies tracking the passenger journeys throughout their whole trip. But these are like more like the traditional patterns. Most of them have been discarded and not being used or preferred in the developed countries because of the reliability as well as efficiency of these surveys. So modern survey techniques which are being used in the countries are like the automatic counts of the passenger. They can count when and how many passengers on board from one station, and between the lines and the transfer there are counters. There are always trackers of the tickets. So they can always use the GPS based tracking. They can always they are using as well mobile app surveys. So they also see and track how many passengers are there and how many people are using the tickets, etc. And whenever you scan or board one system or transfer between the systems, still they can track you, from your origin and destination. And then Bluetooth and Wi-Fi sensors. These are also being used, but there is always a concern of the privacy. So we will talk about that. That whenever it comes to such Internet of Things data and data collection, using these methods, especially when we talk about the tracking and the mobile apps and Bluetooth Wi-Fi, there is definitely a concern of the privacy of the data. Primarily speaking, data collection in Pakistan versus the global practices are, not everywhere. In major cities, people have started adopting in Pakistan, going towards the global best practices and more efficient and reliable ways. But still, most of the cities in Pakistan and the authorities and responsible persons are opting out for the manual data collection. Even the counts are still being done manually by person, or even after the video recording, which is still laborious and takes time. And there is also reliability issues when it comes to those kind of methods, and uh, limited use of the technology in smaller cities, inconsistent data. This is one of also major concern when we talk about the data availability and consistency. There is no integration and there is no check and balance also for the data when we talk about uh, within the project, within different entities and between the entities. So there is always an consistency between the data collection. And challenges definitely are there for the people who are doing the surveys, installing the equipment, and also whenever they are in the field. There are multiple challenges such as the society and also the infrastructure does not support maybe sometime, and then the permits, etc., comes into play. And the cost is also one of the major factor when we talk about it. Sometimes the infrastructure requires a huge funding, and implementation needs huge funding from the project, but there is not enough funding that you can go with the latest technologies and you cannot afford it. So the global best practices, as we saw before as well, are like the automatic system. Here even we have the VDUs which are implemented for the whole operational infrastructure of the Riyadh city. So which can also do the counts and also can is capable of doing and generating the OD matrices and tracking the vehicles. And then we have integration of multiple data sources. So that data can be utilized by the public transport as well as the private vehicles for the efficient network performance. And then the continuous real-time data collection happens throughout the day. There is no break between the data collection and monitoring at the operation centers. And advanced analysis of the data validation and insights also comes into play through different spot checks as well as counts and the ramp metering available within the city. So the challenges in Pakistan data collection, Pakistan for the data collection practices are definitely, as we talk about the resource constraints, the cost plays a huge role when we talk about adaptation to the latest data collection techniques. Expertise, there is definitely a shortage of skilled personnel for operation and maintenance of those advanced systems. And then the infrastructure limitations and data standardization issues between within the entity as well as between different entities and between different cities. Even within one province, we see that there is a huge issue and gap of data standardization, and we need to also work on developing and adopting those standards and standardization of the data collection throughout at least the city and then through the province. And in the volume surveys, mostly manual counts, as we discussed earlier. This is the limited use of the traffic counters, which could uh, cause issues, the reliability, and then we talk about the comprehensive surveys are not frequent enough so that you can talk about the reliability, and even the entities and the authorities who are responsible for such infrastructure developments are not doing the frequent surveys. uh, and global practice is that to have at least frequent counts and then permanent counters at least on some of the places. Like even here in Ministry of Transport has their permanent counters throughout the whole kingdom, so they can always have a check and balance, and those are accessible online, and they have a dashboard to get and extract the data from those. So they can always do a spot check on their accounts and look into the data collection. So, public transportation surveys, local versus the global approaches. So, mostly we do the paper-based onboard surveys in Pakistan, manual counts, limited use of GPS for the vehicle tracking. Mobile-based apps are being used here, and we have done automated counters are available in the public transport hub, as well as the digitized surveys are being used here. We have done them already even for the national transport model development for the whole kingdom. And then the processing of the data, as we just discussed, happens manually, mostly in Pakistan. But here they are already advancing towards the automatic counts and processing of the data through the algorithms. And the frequency, when we talk about a city and a province and a country, happens very rare or only whenever we talk about a specific project or study area, which does not actually impact when we talk about the project, but it is very important when we talk about the frequent data collection for the whole city or at least the district or within the jurisdiction of authority. So these are like, again, going through the innovative data collection technologies. Smartphone movement tracking easily available and can be accessed, and you can then talk about tracking the public transport as well as the private transport as well as the users. Drones are being used already, and Internet of Things sensor network, because when we look into the Google Maps, when we talk about driving or using public transport through Google Map, it gives us a way, and it tells us and incorporates the congestion, whether it is happening because of the public transport or because of the private transport. So definitely it is collecting in the background some data of the users of the mobile, although maybe it's not going through your personal data, but still it is collecting the data, which can be utilized to see the patterns of the people. And when people are, you can conclude by this data collection that when people are moving more or which are the directions and the timings and the different time of the day, you can use that to predict the movements and which are the concentration and which time of the day, and also the weekends and the weekdays, how the movement of the people changes between these different days. And then benefits of the advanced data collection methods are like, you definitely get enhanced data interaction between different KPIs, with different parameters of the data, and you can always align that. even TomTom is being used here. They are being more active even within the region, and they provide you with the data which they have collected through the mobiles as well as their satellite imagery tracking. The alignment and collaboration would happen within the authorities, and then you would also be looking into the data accessibility is increased. So there is a one platform which can be shared or a dashboard within the entity or within the authority. So the data also becomes more consistent and you don't have to do it again. So it's also time saving. And historical analysis, you would always have a backup of the data, and the frequency of the data will definitely increase when we talk about the collection. And decision making, definitely when you will have more data, historical data enhanced and increased data reliability, you would definitely have improved decision making based on the data collection. And when we talk about the operation centers and other IoT things and smart implementation and smart city infrastructure implementation, you can do the real-time data monitoring and then accordingly make decisions as well. So based on the data collection, this is just a brief introduction of advanced techniques for the demand modeling, how we utilize and can utilize the data which we have collected. More of it can be done in the detail, because every topic we can deep dive into each of these topics and have a separate session and discussions or even the panels on these multiple topics. Big data integration at the hubs is not available everywhere, but it is happening and people are moving towards that. So that definitely combines multiple data sources. For example, Ministry of Transport here deals with multiple modes of transport, including the rail, uh, air, as well as the ships and the sea and the water taxis, as well as the private land taxis and the private cars and the public transports within the cities under their entities. So they have a combined integrated dashboard for their all modes, where you can see multiple KPIs, the right, receive the data information coming from the counters. So this is a huge step forward when we talk about the advanced techniques, which could help definitely in the demand modeling. And then we talk about the machine learning algorithm. These are definitely very crucial and critical, increasing the reliability and the predictive historical as well as the forecasting of the future demand patterns, because you are not going to have sensors and infrastructure on each corner of the street, but this would definitely, in the machine learning, helps through the algorithm, that you can predict and be more reliable on the prediction of the existing as well as historical and the future demands of the patterns, depending upon whatever you are going to look into. And then the agent based modeling is now becoming more and more preferable option for when it comes to demand modeling. People are going towards that, because uh, traditional four-step modeling, definitely it's still being implemented and it is still one of the priority, but agent-based modeling is becoming more and more increasingly attractive, because you can break your trip into multiple destinations. When I'm going home, I can just go to the grocery and then get something and then go home. So it's not actually from work to home, it's work to a shopping or a grocery, and then to home. I could go for a movie in the evening, or to a restaurant. So it becomes a multi-purpose trip. So now the trip sharing and agent-based modeling is becoming more and more attractive. So that uh, actually provides you more reliability when it comes to the trip timings and the patterns and the movements of the people. But this again is very dependent on huge and reliable data collection. If you don't have enough and reliable data, agent-based modeling is not going to be that much, useful or reliable when it comes to the traveler's behavior. Real-time demand responsive planning, cloud-based, as well as with the smart city and smart mobility implementation with infrastructure is becoming more of more thing, but it definitely requires a lot of investment and infrastructure, as well as the studies and the detailed assessment depending upon the demographic and society and the people. It has multiple factors, but this gives you at least on the public transport level, it is already implemented, but on the overall whole city level, smart city is not yet entirely implemented and anywhere at all. But people are moving towards the partial implementation and then going towards the whole city. So this is like the future goal when we talk about this. Would give real time adjustment of the public transport as well as the private transport. And then when you talk about the operations of the public transport as well as the signals within the city. So we have talked again and again about the challenges in implementing advanced techniques in Pakistan. Again, initial investment definitely plays a huge role, and high upfront expenses for technology acquisition and implementation are a must. But definitely it goes down to whether we are able to afford those costs or not. We will talk about some of the way forward and solutions. How can this be implemented, or we can have any kind of the initiative for that. And then technical skills gap definitely needs to be filled with the specialized training and expertise in data analysis. For example, transportation engineering department is already producing people who are specialized in gaining knowledge for the transportation engineering when it comes to different kinds of fields. But we still need to have people who are skilled enough and are specialized in giving them maybe courses and trainings in the data analytics and in different kinds of softwares as well as different fields, not just a generalized kind of information and knowledge base. But this depends on how the countries or the authorities or the region's approach is going to vary and focus on developing the skills of the people. And then infrastructure readiness, upgrading the existing system to support advanced data collection methods. Definitely the infrastructure plays a crucial role. We need to have the infrastructure, otherwise this does not implement at all. This again goes back to the manual collection of the data and then reliability of the data. And data privacy concerns, definitely addressing the public's concern. Whenever we are going to collect so much detailed data, then a privacy concern is always going to be available there, and we will have a big question mark. So the privacy has to be addressed. So let's say we talk about the short-term goals and implementation are like the pilot projects, starting with the small implementation of these initiatives and have some kind of direction. Capacity building, we talked about it. Data standardization, public awareness. Definitely when we talk about campaign and education, we need to also involve people that this is going to happen and they will be cooperative. Whenever we do surveys, for example, if you do household surveys and SP and RP surveys, uh, which are very critical when we talk about the development of the models or any kind of feasibility studies or any future projects or initiative which is going to be implemented, or which are still being considered, or whether we are going to implement or not. This plays a critical role. And if you don't have public awareness and they are not cooperative enough, then the data reliability definitely is impacted by that. Let's say long-term strategy for Pakistan could be the technology integration in data analytics centers, smart city integration, and the research partnership with the existing institutes who are working on it, or any kind of collaboration with the universities, companies, ongoing innovative transit companies which are interested in implementing some kind of pilot projects, or even funding the whole system. We had a project in electric buses here. Are not a thing at the moment, but they are being implemented. So what, for example, companies have done, they have provided free of cost. Each company in different region have provided their bus. That also plays a role as a marketing as well as getting into the market, supporting the development and goal of the sustainable transport. So let's say we talk about the funding strategies for data collection improvement. Government should increase the budget, Praveen, for the transit data infrastructure. Investing into this definitely plays a big role, and they should see the value in this investment, and that has to be highlighted to the entities and authorities. Then public-private partnership. uh, because collaboration with the private sector gives an advantage. When we talk about the uh, construction and implementation of huge projects, even developed countries such as Saudi Arabia, they struggle sometimes with the funding of the project. So public-private partnership definitely plays a critical role throughout, no matter which country we are talking about. International aid is also very critical if we can secure any aid for the future project, or you know uh, the implementation, or even the pilots, as we talked about. Revenue generation, there always has to be set up and the standard structure for the revenue generation. Otherwise, a project is not viable, and you cannot always rely on the private funding and international aid. So there has to have some kind of revenue generation system and mechanism implemented and proposed in order to have data collection improvement. So then we talk about the key performance indicators for monitoring the progress, data accuracy rate, how it is improving, whether it is, contributing towards what the goals were set on, and then the coverage expansion, whether this is contributing towards the expansion of the coverage or improvement of the system overall, utilization rate of the system is being improved, or there is a change, or, when you talk about the performance of the system, whether having data collection and also improvement and investing on the data collection and, with the modern techniques and the data centers analytics, whether this is going to be contributing towards the improvement of the system or not. And this again boils down to the cost efficiency. So this all has to be evaluated overall when we talk about initiatives, as well as after the implementation of the project. Potential impacts which we can see when we talk about the data collection and improvement and adaptation of the modern technologies and techniques. The service should be improving, and we see that this happens definitely within the modern countries who have implemented and have adopted such techniques. Ridership increases overall when we talk about the efficiency and reliability, accessibility of the system. Environmental benefits definitely comes into play, because the routes are optimized and schedules are reducing the overall emission and not waiting and wasting time in the congestions. And economic growth, definitely this goes on to the IRR, as well as the people contributing towards public transport projects, as well as when overall society is improving, and you are talking about the people movements to and from the destinations of the work, as well as commercial areas. So that contributes directly and indirectly towards the economic growth of the country. And addressing the data privacy concerns, what we talked about, that there is always a question mark when we talk about Internet of Things, or data collection, modernization, integration, and collection of huge data. So there should always be a legal framework, and then anonymous techniques, and transparent policies, and regular audits. These four major things and points contribute towards a surety of the data privacy, which are definitely a concern from the public as well as the authorities when it comes to any kind of platform or a dashboard. Then another option or the way forward could be, which is like the collaboration opportunities internationally, globally, as well as within the different organizations. Workshops, international workshops should be organized regularly, not just like domestic, but like involvement of the global experts. Staff exchange program for the training, sending professionals for the training for data collection, as well as the public transport, research projects, and the consulting partnerships. So these are just the future trends of the data collection in the transit, which are happening in the developed countries, as well as being adopted in the developing countries. So our AI integration to the data collection and the public transport, blockchain for the data privacy. We talked about the concern of the data privacy. 5G enabled real-time monitoring. 5G is being utilized actively, and then AR and VR data visualization as well. So there could be potential obstacles and mitigation strategies. Let's say resistance to change. Definitely, there is always a resistance to change whenever we talk, and it's not just limited to Pakistan, but other countries as well. So the gradual implementation could mitigate that resistance of the change. And then high cost is also one of the concerns. We definitely face that, and it is a huge hurdle when we talk about our country. So, a phased implementation and seeking international funding or pilot projects from the international aid could be one of the solutions. So, this is just an exemplary obstacle, which definitely is valid for Pakistan. So, we can talk about the other as well. And then the stakeholders, government agencies should prioritize and allocate their funding accordingly. Policy support and advanced data collection should be highlighted that it is very critical and crucial so that they see value in it. And then transit operators also should adopt and embrace the technologies, and the technology providers should be interested and they see a market as well as some tailored solutions for our local conditions. And then public or the private should be participated as well, as we talked about the public awareness and their feedback, which definitely matters a lot. So conclusion is paving the way forward for the data-driven transit future, because embracing the change, continuous improvement, when you have a data historical as well as real time, and then you can predict a more reliable future, then it definitely guides towards and points towards the problem, and then you can go towards the solution, and which eventually contributes towards the continuous improvement of the system. Collaborative approach. This fosters the partnership between different industries and agencies, government, private, and international experts. And then definitely we in for Pakistan, like creating a world-class public transport system. We already saw that PRT Peshawar was highlighted for one of the exemplary system for Pakistan. So this could be, adapted to different cities as well as expanded towards, multiple systems which we already have. The bigger picture just shows one example, like how the interchanges and integration of the system could happen and should be happening. Uh, Multiple facilities and integration, retail, convenience. We talked about the economic contribution as well as the journey information, ticketing, toilets, etc. So these some of them may seem like small factors, but this definitely goes down to a whole detailed study, and it definitely contributes towards the economy, towards the system, towards the attraction, and overall experience improvement for the users as well as for the system, and then for the country as well. So this is it. I think I just made it in time, so we have enough time for the discussion. It's an open floor discussion. I ran through it, and it's very generative, but because all these topics definitely need so much more detailed focus, but we just ran through all of them in this presentation.